What do you think's really important for kids and people in the future, your great grandkids, to know? What kind of things do you want them to remember about you and your family here, and just things about what ideas would you tell them to live on how to live? What do you want?
You know, the main thing about it, when we at different times that we all get together, we just have such a good time together when we have all of my family. And this is my whole family, my sisters and brothers and things right here.
The red, white, and blue family picture. That is beautiful. That's really something to be proud of.
And we had it down there under the persimmon tree. That's all. That's what I want my family to do. I'm fixing that way. They can't sell now. It's going from generation to generation.
You want something that goes on in the future.
Yeah, like I'm saying now. Like I told you about my older grandparents' thing was white. Okay, we done come 5 generations down.
5 generations down, and we got And this day it's so easy for young people. I know I didn't really appreciate the historical value of my grandparents and great-grandparents when I was a kid. It isn't until you start being a parent and start getting to being a grandparent yourself that you really appreciate your grandparents and things that they went through, things that they knew.
Oh, yes.
Things that they... And you always said, take care. I remember one time I was just asking you just on how the Campbells just lost everything, or actually didn't lose it because nobody really took it. Most of it was just kind of fumbled out of their own hands, and through infighting, lots and lots of family infighting.
Oh, yes.
And what was the difference with the Hearne family? Why did they prosper during the same period when the Campbells were going down? How did the Hearnes go up? And the first thing she was talking about taking care of what you got and keeping the family together. As long as it's one family.
Yeah, keep it together.
Yeah.
You got to keep. But see, the trouble of it is with the Campbells, they never was together. Never. And the main thing it was your granddad. Miss Campbell was sweet as you could find. You can't find her no. But see, I never heard her say she had anything. Her relatives.
Right.
All what it was she got was through him. And then, as she got why she got wealthy, and when the bottom fell out of it, it just like you bust a paper sack.
Right. Right. It was a hard fall.
And then another thing, a lot of things that they didn't know until he died. Especially about when they were thinking they were going to lose the property. They didn't know that till he died.
Right. My grandfather had a construction company, and we had the Lick Skillet property, which we never called Lick Skillet. But the property stood good for the construction company's debts. That happens in a lot of small businesses, a lot of the shops, and the house that the shop owner has stands good for any debts that the shop has. And after my grandfather died, he had divided things so that his 2 sons got the construction company, and my mother and my grandmother got the property. Well, and for whatever reason, however reason, they ran the construction company just 2 or 3 years later, was just almost out of business.
Oh yeah. Just like you bust a paper bag.
Right. Bam, just everything.
And then after she had to move, she move and go into town in that apartment and stuff. Still, she didn't never come back.
No, she never. It was a real humiliation for her.
Yes.
And I don't think that the Campbells couldn't come back from a loss. That's a very important thing too. You take a blow because life gives you blows, and you come back. And but the Campbell family never
couldn't bounce back.
They were too stuck in seeing them. So they had to have once the money was gone, everything else.
Let me tell you something. Once the head leader the head leader died. The party died. And then Mr. John, he was trying to get everything.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted everything under his control.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really tore it up.
Yep, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
My that's another thing. If you're the head of your family, you be the head of the family. But that's not the same as being a dictator. It isn't your personal little kingdom. Because what happened in my family, my grandfather ruled everything, and you didn't touch a thing without my grandfather's approval.
No.
You didn't even fish in the lake.
Oh no,
big lake, because
no.
he went out there and threw bread to the fish, and he knew those
and missed
fish.
The fish.
He knew those damn fish.
We had ate them up.
But the downside of it all was that his boys did not grow up learning how to work together. His boys didn't grow up how to be leaders. They just learned to wait until Daddy told them what to do. And when Daddy had passed away and wasn't there to tell them what to do, well, one thing they did was out and party. But it took them years to get and.
My mommy partied all the
They
time.
never really did.
Every weekend or every through the week, her and Miss Marie Beans and a bunch of
Yep.
all of those rich people.
All the rich little old ladies in Shreveport came out there and drank their sherry.
Drank and played dumb, whatever.
They would sing. I remember.
My mommy played the piano,
Mhm.
and Miss Bean could sing real well.
Right, Miss Bean, and had people like Van Cliburn and Leon T. Price, the opera singers, and the classical people who came out there, and because they knew my grandmother, they knew Mrs. Bean, and the rest of them. And one thing I'll never forget: Mrs. Bean sang opera. My grandmother was playing piano, and across the lake was a man named, I think it was Dan too, and Dan was a white man that worked for my grandfather for many, many years. Dan couldn't read or write. He was just the most honest, hard-working guy. He comes running in from across the lake.
He hadn't never heard nobody singing opera. He thought something was going wrong.
Something had happened. He heard the opera. He didn't know opera music. And he thought somebody had gotten hurt or injured.
Yeah.
He ran from across the lake,
Yeah.
burst into the room. That is a true story. He thought somebody was hurt.
Something had happened.
And they were in there, and she was in there
Enjoy.
singing opera. I
Mm-hmm.
remember another time I had a pet goat, and my pet goat came into the living room when they were having one of their little opera and sherry times, and somebody got up off the couch, and my goat just walked up, hopped up on the couch, and there was some rich lady on one side of the couch, and my goat on the other side of the couch.
Yeah, but
Rocky.
But just like I said, I worked right there for 50 cents an hour.
Wow. And that was starting in 1960, 1959.
Was you what, 7?
Well, yeah, I was 7, so it would have been 58.
Mhm.
Where I was 6 when I arrived there and turned 7 right after. So I was born in 1951, so that would have been the summer of 1957. The summer of 1957.
When did they move out there?
Early
When?
50s or middle 50s.
They went out there long before I went to work there.
Right. And were you there when the first house burned?
No.
Okay. So
No.
they had just finished building the first house.
They
when
were
it
going
caught on
right
fire.
after they had just first built it.
Right.
But they built a better house after, it burned, because they got insurance and everything, they had everything.
Right, more brick and things. But, the Campbells looked like a real strong, rich, powerful family outside, but there were so many family squabbles on the inside that it was just like, cancer rotting
you couldn't
inside.
tell from the outside what was going on in the inside.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
And I was always in the middle of it.
and you did that so well. My grandfather wouldn't tolerate my grandmother having any sherry or anything to drink, and my grandmother, she suffered with chronic depression, and most of her life, and I think without being married to my grandfather, without a little sherry, she would have gone under. But this woman threaded the needle between the two of them.
Yeah. So me and her fixed the way
Y'all had some clever ways of getting the sherry out there.
Well,
through the drugstore and everything.
We had the folks to bring it out there to us.
Right.
And a lot of times they bring it out there and put it in my car.
And yeah, and Granddaddy, and I guess I was about 10 or 12 when I came to realize that Granddaddy could have fired you and put her in an institution just about any time he got the wild hair.
But he didn't know how it was getting there.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't know how it was getting there. Just kind of appeared. But that's
Because
I
at that
learned.
time he didn't want me to drive.
Mm.
But see, I would drive my own car. But how he called? It was Silverman. There was a place there. There's still land Freeport. I went down there and had them to fix it where the man would bring it out there to deliver it to. And then I put the check in my front car seat, and then he would tell me how much it was, and that's where she drank it.
Sounds like moonshine thing. Put the check in the front seat, put the wine underneath.
But she had that.
Mm-hmm.
She had to have.
Well, yes, and she had depression. She had some physical problems.
Yeah,
and living way out there. She was like a songbird in a golden cage. But don't kid yourself. That Greenwood property was a cage. For it was, she really didn't like living out there because she liked the music, possibly she liked things in town where friends were.
She didn't have as much company as she would have.
Right. It was a difficult drive out to Greenwood in those days, and because the interstate wasn't built.
Oh no, it was just 80.
Right, Highway 80.
Highway 80.
And the 79, it was just really slow. But but I keep coming back to that my grandfather. Pardon?
You put the cold in the dry.
Oh, thank you. Well, now most of the time out there at Greenwood, it was me and my brother and my mother, my grandfather and my grandmother.
That's right.
And but where was my father in this? Because my parents didn't get divorced. What happened was my dad.
Pay the government back.
Right, through his own faults, or trying to keep up with the rich Campbells, and trying to make his young wife, rich like she'd always been. He cheated on his taxes in business to a big degree, and today cheating on your taxes is people do it, and it's just kind of a laugh. But back in the early '50s, that was right after World War I. They used to have billboards on the side of the road called them tax dodgers. You don't pay your taxes. Some woman's son died in World War II because you didn't pay your taxes, or we didn't have the money to buy the war equipment. Tax evasion in wartime, very serious thing. And right after, it was only about 7 or 10 years after World War II. So Daddy was arrested for income tax evasion as a federal crime, and he was sentenced to 8 years in federal penitentiary. And I found I didn't hear about any of this from the family. I found the trial transcripts in a box in my grandmother Williamson's attic, and showed them to Daddy, and he kind of got a laugh of how he could have gone, how that they could have gotten him for more, but he got off here, he got off this, but. So my grandfather, I don't think he could stand having the idea of his son-in-law, being in prison.
And that was the reason y'all moved out there in that little house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
because y'all couldn't afford to live there in town.
We were told we had a nice house in town, but we'd lost everything. And Daddy and Mama and Granddaddy made the deal that Mama and us, the boys, came out and lived at the Greenwood property. Daddy lived someplace else, out of state. And my grandfather was actually able to go to the federal judge and get his sentence just set aside. He got the judge just to turn him over to him, and that's kind of authority. Yes, in Houston, Little Rock. But that's kind of authority power my grandfather had, that he could get a federal judge to set aside a conviction for 8 years.
Well, let me say this. Back at that time, money talked.
Yes, money. God knows what day they paid that judge.
That's right, money talked. It ain't like back at that time, you had some money, you could pay somebody.
Yes.
And then another thing, it's who you know.
Right. And he had money and he knew people.
So, because he was in this big business, and he knew everybody.
So he only let Daddy come around about 2 or 3 times a year at Christmas, Thanksgiving, few holidays like that.
Yeah, but how cold was he treated?
Right. Yeah.
Hot or cold.
Yeah.
He was there, but he wasn't welcome.
Well, one time Granddaddy just walked past me and he said, "If I see your damn daddy," you know, I almost never said your daddy without putting your damn daddy around it, "I'll call the sheriff and have him run off." And he just walked past me, barely slowed down, for no reason, out of the blue says, "If I see your daddy around here, I'll call the sheriff and have him run off." Just keeps right on walking. That was Granddaddy. But
Yeah,
and you know, and a little boy, he loves his father anyway. And I'm more like my dad than my mother. And which, by the way, Daddy was the one who got my mother when they sold the Lickskillet property, 1974, to keep the mineral rights. It was Daddy's idea. So the mineral rights that we have today really come from Daddy after a lifetime of bad decisions and mistakes. He hung in there and hit one home run. You know, he got he caught, and so I'll always thank him for that. But yeah, Granddaddy would only let him come around a few times, and
like I said, you treated so cool. You like you had a hunk of ice.
Yeah,
he was treated like that.
And as I've gotten older, I've come to accept that I looked like my father, and my grandfather blamed my father for destroying his daughter's life. And my mother was my grandfather's favorite child, so he destroyed the life
for a while. Then John got to be the favorite.
Then John got to be the favorite.
And they never treated Alan like they did some other two.
No, they never did. I don't know exactly why. I know he had his own personal problems.
You know, because Alan never came around like Miss Ella, your mama, and Mr. John, whenever he come. And then, you know, Alan, he was a heavy drinker too.
Yes.
Married 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. And but it was and something you said about me and my brother was that we weren't taught to be brothers and love. We were taught more to fight, and that is true throughout.
You had to. Let me say this. We don't want this on the tape. Okay.
Okay, hold on.
You had
turn this off.
Okay, here's the family reunion photo from just a few years ago. I can't remember, maybe 5 years ago. I can't remember what she said, but okay, the red, white, and blue representing different sides of the family. And you know what's great about this? You know, that's the strength of the Hearne family. That that family unity, that people can get along, can work together, can correct each other, and love each other. That is the real treasure of the Hearne family.